All Hallows Eve, better known as Halloween. I brought in the All Hallows Eve. What better time of the year? Halloween! It falls on October 31st, 2023. When I went shopping, all of the Halloween items were available. What better time for pumpkins or scary things to be available? Halloween, also known as Allhalloween or All Saints' Eve, is a widely celebrated holiday on 31st October in many countries. It marks the beginning of Allhallowtide, a period dedicated to remembering the dead. The origins of Halloween can be traced back to Celtic harvest festivals, particularly the Gaelic festival called Samhain, which is believed to have pagan roots. Some theories suggest that Samhain was Christianized as All Hallows Day and its eve by the early church. However, it is also believed that Halloween originated solely as a Christian holiday, being the vigil of All Hallows Day. Irish and Scottish immigrants brought many Halloween customs to North America in the 19th century, spreading the holiday to other countries through American influence in the late 20th and early 21st century. Halloween is associated with various activities, such as trick-or-treating, attending costume parties, carving pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns, and participating in divination games. It is also a time for playing pranks, visiting haunted attractions, telling scary stories, and watching horror films. Some people engage in Christian religious observances on All Hallows Eve, attending church services and lighting candles on the graves of the deceased. Although Halloween has religious origins, it has become a secular celebration for many. Traditionally, some Christians abstained from meat on this day, leading to the consumption of vegetarian foods such as apples, potato pancakes, and soul cakes. If you're like me, I would take the pumpkin pie. Halloween pumpkin pie recipe from Old Jack-o'-lantern. Halloween is believed to have Christian origins and has incorporated historic customs and beliefs. The word Halloween itself refers to the evening before holy days like All Hallows Day and All Souls Day. In Christianity, major feasts and vigils often began the night before, including the Feast of All Hallows. Allhallowtide, spanning these 3 days, is a time when Western Christians honor all saints and pray for the souls of the departed who have not yet reached heaven. Various commemorative events for saints and martyrs were held by different churches on different dates, mainly during the spring season. The Pantheon in Rome was rededicated by Pope Boniface IV on 13th May 609 as a commemoration of Saint Mary and all martyrs, coinciding with the ancient Roman festival of the dead called Lemuria. During the 8th century, Pope Gregory III established an oratory in St. Peter's that housed the relics of numerous holy apostles, saints, martyrs, and confessors. The oratory was either dedicated on 1st November or on Palm Sunday in April 732, as mentioned in different sources. By the year 800, evidence suggests that churches in Ireland and Northumbria were already celebrating a feast to honor All Saints on 1st November. This date may have been introduced in the Frankish Empire by Alcuin of Northumbria, a member of Charlemagne's court. The change to make 1st November the official date in the Frankish Empire was possibly influenced by both Celtic and Germanic cultures, as these peoples marked the beginning of winter as a time to commemorate the dead, aligning with the natural cycle of nature. It is also suggested that the change was driven by practical reasons, such as the inability of Rome to accommodate the large influx of pilgrims during the summer months and concerns about public health issues like Roman fever, which posed a threat during Rome's hot summers. What is Pope Francis during the eve of Halloween? Well, I read that Pope Francis is to turn the Vatican into a giant haunted house for Halloween. By the conclusion of the 12th century, the celebration had gained recognition as the holy days of obligation in Western Christianity and encompassed customs like the tolling of church bells for souls in purgatory. It was also customary for individuals dressed in somber attire to parade the streets, ringing a bell with a mournful sound and summoning all devout Christians to remember the impoverished souls. The Allhallowtide tradition of baking and distributing soul cakes for all baptized souls has been proposed as the origin of trick-or-treating. This custom dates back at least to the 15th century and was prevalent in certain regions of England, Wales, Flanders, Bavaria, and Austria. Groups of underprivileged individuals, frequently children, would go from door to door during Allhallowtide, collecting soul cakes in exchange for offering prayers for the deceased, particularly the souls of the donor's friends and relatives. This practice was known as souling. Soul cakes were also presented for the souls themselves to consume, or these soulers would serve as their representatives. Similar to the Lenten tradition of hot cross buns, Soul cakes were often adorned with a cross, indicating that they were baked as alms. The concept of souling is mentioned by Shakespeare in his comedy The Two Gentlemen of Verona, 1593. While engaging in souling, Christians would carry lanterns made from hollowed-out turnips, which may have originally symbolized the souls of the deceased. Jack-o'-lanterns were employed to ward off malevolent spirits. On All Saints and All Souls' Day during the 19th century, candles were lit in residences in Ireland, Flanders, Bavaria, and Tyrol, where they were referred to as soul lights and served to guide the souls back to their earthly homes. Candles were also often illuminated at graves on All Souls' Day in many of these regions. In Brittany, libations of milk were poured on the graves of relatives, or food would be left on the dining table overnight for the returning souls, a custom also found in Tyrol and parts of Italy. Christian minister Prince Sori Conte associated the practice of wearing costumes with the belief in vengeful spirits. It was traditionally believed that the souls of the departed roamed the earth until All Saints' Day, and All Hallows' Eve provided one last opportunity for the deceased to seek revenge on their enemies before transitioning to the afterlife. To avoid being recognized by any soul seeking vengeance, people would don masks or costumes. During the Middle Ages, churches in financially disadvantaged European regions that couldn't display relics of martyred saints during Allhallowtide permitted parishioners to dress up as saints instead. Some Christians continue to observe this custom on Halloween. In mainland Europe, especially in France, many Christians believe that once a year, on Halloween, the dead from graveyards would rise for a wild and hideous carnival known as the Danse Macabre, which was often depicted in church decorations. The Danse Macabre exhorted Christians not to forget the ephemeral nature of worldly matters. The Danse Macabre was sometimes reenacted in European village pageants and court masks, with participants dressing up as corpses from various societal strata. This may be the origin of Halloween costume parties. In Britain, these customs faced opposition during the Reformation, as Protestants condemned the concept of purgatory as a popish doctrine incompatible with the Calvinist belief in predestination. State-sanctioned ceremonies associated with the intercession of saints and prayer for souls in purgatory were abolished during the Elizabethan reforms, although All Hallows' Day remained in the English liturgical calendar to honor saints as godly individuals. Some nonconformist Protestants redefined the theology of All Hallows' Eve, believing that souls couldn't journey from purgatory to heaven, as Catholics often asserted, but instead the so-called ghosts were believed to be evil spirits. Other Protestants held beliefs in an intermediate state known as Hades, bosom of Abraham. In certain regions, Catholics and Protestants continued the practice of souling, candlelit processions, or ringing church bells for the departed. However, the Anglican Church eventually banned this bell ringing. According to medieval archaeology professor Mark Donnelly and historian Daniel Deal, barns and homes were blessed to protect people and livestock from the influence of witches, who were believed to accompany the malignant spirits as they wandered the earth. After 1605, Hallowtide was overshadowed in England by Guy Fawkes Night, 5th of November, which adopted some of the customs associated with Halloween. In England, the discontinuation of official ceremonies related to the intercession of saints gave rise to new unofficial Hallowtide customs. In 18th-19th century rural Lancashire, Catholic families would gather on hills on the night of All Hallows' Eve. One person would hold a bundle of burning straw on a pitchfork while the others knelt around them, praying for the souls of their relatives and friends until the flames extinguished. This practice was known as teen lay. A similar custom existed in Hertfordshire, as well as the lighting of Tyndall fires in Derbyshire. Some suggested that these Tyndalls were originally lit to guide the souls back to earth. In Scotland and Ireland, old All-Hallowtide customs that contradicted Reformed teachings were not suppressed due to their significance in the life cycle and rites of passage within local communities, making it challenging to restrict them. The custom of leaving a meal for deceased relatives before attending church services was observed in certain parts of Italy until the 15th century. Churches in 19th century Italy performed reenactments of scenes from saints' lives on All Hallows' Day, featuring realistic wax figures. Holy Spirit Hospital in Rome had a display in 1823 where bodies of the recently deceased were arranged around a wax angel statue pointing towards heaven. Parish priests in Italy went from house to house on that night, asking for small gifts of food that they shared among themselves. In Spain, special pastries called bones of the holy were baked and placed on graves. Christian processions and services were held in cemeteries in Spain, France, and Latin America during Allhallowtide, followed by an all-night vigil. An event in 19th century San Sebastian involved a procession to the city cemetery during Allhallowtide, attracting beggars who appealed to the memories of deceased loved ones for compassion. A Lady of Mount Carmel. Today's Halloween customs are believed to have been influenced by folk customs and beliefs from Celtic-speaking countries, some of which may have pagan origins. Jack Santino, a folklorist, notes that in Ireland there was a delicate balance between customs and beliefs associated with Christianity and those associated with pre-Christian religions. The origins of Halloween customs are commonly associated with the Gaelic festival Samhain. Samhain marked the transition from the harvest season to winter, often referred to as the darker half of the year. It was considered a liminal period when the boundary between this world and the other world was thin, allowing the spirits or fairies known as Osai to venture into our realm. These entities, believed to be diminished versions of ancient gods, held sway over people's minds even after official religious doctrines took hold. The AOC were both revered and feared, and individuals sought the protection of God when approaching their dwellings. During Samhain, offerings of food, drink, and crops were left outside to appease the AOC and ensure the survival of both humans and livestock. It was also believed that the souls of the deceased returned home on this night, prompting the setting of places at the dinner table and by the fire to welcome them. This belief in the return of the dead on a specific night and the need to appease them is found in various cultures. In 19th century Ireland, candles were lit, prayers were offered for the souls of the departed, and festivities including eating, drinking, and games took place. Divination rituals and games were a significant part of household celebrations throughout Ireland and Britain, particularly in Celtic-speaking regions. These activities were often aimed at foretelling one's future, especially regarding matters of death and marriage. Traditional practices involved the use of apples, nuts, scrying, mirror gazing, pouring molten lead or egg whites into water, dream interpretation, and more. Special bonfires were lit believed to possess protective and purifying properties, with their flames, smoke, and ashes offering defense against darkness and decay. In some places, torches were carried around homes and fields in a sunwise direction for protection. The fires served as a form of imitative or sympathetic magic, mimicking the power of the sun to ward off winter's darkness. Additionally, they were used for divination purposes and to repel malevolent spirits. The church elders in certain Scottish parishes banned these bonfires and divination games, while in Wales, bonfires were lit to prevent the souls of the dead from descending to earth and later to ward off the devil. From at least the 16th century, the festival of mumming and guising has been practiced in Ireland, Scotland, the Isle of Man, and Wales. During this tradition, people would go from house to house in costume or disguise, reciting verses or songs in exchange for food. It is believed that this custom originally involved impersonating the AOC, or the souls of the dead, and receiving offerings on their behalf, similar to souling. The skull, symbolic of death and the fleeting nature of human life, is commonly used in Halloween decorations. While early Halloween postcards from the early 20th century did not depict trick-or-treating, the practice gained popularity in North America during the 1930s. 2 hazelnuts would be roasted near the fire, with one named after the person roasting them and the other named after the desired person. In 1976, the March of Dimes copyrighted a mini haunted house for the March of Dimes and began using haunted houses as a fundraising method through their local chapters. In the past, candy apples were often given to children who went trick-or-treating. It is worth noting that the few documented cases of candy poisoning involved parents deliberately poisoning their own children's treats. As we anticipate the glorious festival of all your saints, may we be enabled by you to joyfully follow them in all virtuous and godly living.